This podcast comes with a disclaimer that the audio for the first 4 minutes of the podcast was taken from the microphone of the laptop behind me as opposed to directly through the mixing board in front of me. So it sounds a little different for the first 4 minutes, embarrassingly so. So please stay with it. The conversation with David Howley was fantastic and worth the wait.
Once again, Acoustic Alternatives from Grove Studios in Ypsilanti, the home of the podcast since the fall of 2020, when we were still wearing masks for our guests and really only able to access the local music scene at the time. And fortunately, things changed, and I've been able to bring in guests from all over the country and all over the world, actually. Grove Studios for these musicians in the area is a great spot for you to practice and make a lot of noise. My guest today was like, man, I wish I had a space like this near my house. And actually, David, there is plans, if they ever got the ball rolling, to take shipping containers. You're in the biggest room, and remember I showed you the half wall, drop a shipping container with this kind of stuff in it wherever there are needs. So that would be the same concept wherever you are. My guest is David Howley. Hello, David.
Hi, John.
we got a sidetrack there.
No.
It's been great to see you recently. For the past decade, today's guest on the program was part of a group called We Banjo 3, who had 3 number ones on Billboard's Bluegrass chart. And I still have a question mark about Bluegrass because I do not consider We Banjo 3 a Bluegrass band in any shape or form. I once had the pleasure of interviewing your band back in Ann Arbor. You let me hold a banjo for the first time, which was kind of a weird first-time excitement.
Brought you into the family.
You did. And I'm thanked. Possibly, it's the live in Ann Arbor. See, I'm in the liner notes. I don't even know how I got in there, but it's been a pleasure. The voice that drew me in was yours. The band is great, but your voice is the one that makes me go, ooh, I want to listen to that. So, David Howley, welcome to Acoustic.
Thank you for having me. What a special treat. I feel like we've been friends for so long, and I think this is maybe what I was in a car on the way over here, and the guy who was driving me was like, what are you going to do? And I was like, what are you up to this morning? I was like, I'm going to meet a friend for a chat. And then when we got to the studio, it was like, you're meeting here? I was like, oh, it's a podcast. He said, you said it was a chat. I was like, it is a chat,
We're just recording
We just happened to record it.
Well, let's get this out of the way because I'm curious, and I'm sure some fans are curious. What is the status of We Banjo 3?
Banjo is on a break. It's a difficult thing to figure out in some ways. It's the what's the best way to put this? It's the hazard of a band is that you have to have all of the members who are ready at the same time and able to do the same things. And we did that for 15 years. And things are just a little different now. I think we made a bigger decision around the band that we want that each of the individual members of the band was more important than the band itself, which is a strange thing because most people would look at it the opposite way. That's not how I view it. I think the people are important. These are my brothers and the people, I love these guys, and I don't want anyone to ever be on tour wishing they were at home. Fair. This is, again, and this may be a bigger, deeper question. Why do we do this? Why? Someone told me recently that as a musician, you work your, I'm allowed to say ass.
Yes, it's not radio.
It's okay. Just checking.
You just said ass.
I'm from Ireland, so there should be a warning at the start of this episode. I'm going to try and not curse because I'm a nice young man, and I'm a clean mouth. I'm not going to curse.
Yes, YouTube doesn't love cursing anyway.
But you work so hard to make kind of like a minimum wage living. That is the truth of music. And I think in my 20s I would have had a different answer for this. But someone asked me recently, why do you do it? Why do you do it? Why do you spend half of your year away from your house and your partner and your
family? Why do you stay in hotel rooms around the country? You're on the road so often. You're dealing with dodging colds on planes and all this stuff. And I was like, it's my offering. It's like the thing that I do that I love to do and I would be doing anyway, but it's also the thing that I do that brings a little spark into the world, and it's the best way I can do that. That if I came across a better way that I could do that, I do that other thing, and that's why I do it. It's not, I think when I'm in my 20s, it was my own ego that I was trying to prop up and make myself feel important, and I like the attention. Now, I do it because it's my offering. It's like the thing that I do, much the same as what you're doing right now. It's like the thing that you do that brings a little spark into the world, and it's the best way I can do that. And I think what's interesting in a band is the band is made up of the dynamic of the people involved. The band itself becomes its own entity. And so when it came to We Banjo 3, and, you know, we were a really hardcore touring band. We toured more than anybody else we knew. We did 6 dates a week for years.
Wow.
No other band does that. I've toured with other bands since, and like 4 days a week, they're like, whoa, this is a hard, rough schedule. My first solo tour, I went out and I did like 18 days straight, a gig every night, at least 5 hours of driving a day, radio, everything. I did all of it, all in the same tour, by myself in a car. And it wasn't that hard for me because I was used to that touring schedule. I've since become soft. But yeah, I think it's to really dig in on that, the question you're asking and not to dodge it. It's like everybody has to be willing. It has to be the right thing for everybody. And I didn't and I don't want to do the band with replacements. I think that what was special about We Banjo 3 was 2 sets of brothers, and that will never change for me. That's what made that band really special. That's what that little energetic spark was in that band. It was like, oh, this is something different, and it's the connection between those people and the connection between us. And also now, I still get to experience some of the band because my brother Martin, who was in We Banjo 3 with me, often comes out and plays with me now. And we're playing slightly different music, but we're still playing some of the We Banjo 3 music too.
Yeah.
And so it's just a development too. It's like I'm still doing a lot of the same stuff. The personnel has changed a little bit, but again, the members of We Banjo 3, Enda, Fergal, Martin, were, and I will be shot for saying this. I think there's people out there that love We Banjo 3 and maybe will hate me for saying this, but like those guys are more important to me than any band could ever be.
You've said so many things that I admire. Your work ethic, the fact that you respect your friends that much.
Yeah.
That you would do that to sacrifice. I mean, this is not an insult, but I just saw your solo show and it was a much less crowded show than a We Banjo 3 show, which to me makes no sense because I knew we were going to get a similar experience. It was like We Guitar 2 instead because you and your brother and your sister-in-law were up there playing music just like you would with the band. And to me, that was the same. I got the same joy as I did from a We Banjo 3 show because I still got to hear some of the songs and I knew.
Yeah.
And
that's the reset as well. Like, I think that's been really cool and also really different for me of like, you know, doing shows now, it's different, you know. I'm older as well. I'm like in my mid-30s, whereas, you know, during the really slamming days of the band, I was like late 20s. And someone told me years ago, it was like there's a big difference between like 28 and 32. And I was like, wow.
They were right.
They were very right.
I mean, I'm in my late-ish 50s now, but I still have the energy of a younger person because people don't think I'm that old because I love to experience, new music and promote it. And
but
just
it
like
hits
my
you in a
passion.
different way.
It does hit you differently because I am a little slower at...
you recover slower.
Yeah. I fall asleep in front of the TV way more often than I used to. Anyway, so...
Yeah, but that reset is good. I think that if I'm to speak super honestly and super openly, I think that the pandemic was a real sobering moment for all of us, and that's a funny term to use given how most of us dealt with it.
Right.
But it was a sobering moment, and it was a reset for a lot of things. And for me, in terms of getting back out and doing these shows, We Banjo 3, I remember we played Riverside Hall in Milwaukee, like 2,500 tickets, sold out, flying. But when I started doing this music first, this solo stuff, I played shows where there was like 20 people in the audience. It meant the exact same amount to me, if
good.
not more. I will say this, that like it's a reset and it's hard sometimes because there is the financial element of every musician. You are I did an interview the other day about being a creative, and it was about it being a creative and not just a musician, but like being in the creative field. And they said, "What's the hardest part?" And I said, "I am every part of the operation. I am the CEO in the boardroom. I am the worker on the line. I am HR. I'm every part." And it's so it's hard to separate out those parts, because the worker on the line walks out to 100 people the other night. And the worker on the line goes, "Wow, 100 people decided to drive in a snowstorm to come and see this show. And this means something to them."
Yes.
The suit in the boardroom says, "Why aren't there 200?
Yeah.
And so you're always fighting that. And I think now, again, what's changed for me is I want to have a career in music, because I think that this is what I can bring to the world, and I want to do that. And I think if you get caught in the numbers game, and if you get caught in saying, "Well, did I do better last time?" or, what went wrong? It'll eat away at you so much that eventually you'll lose that spark. And if you lose the spark, then you should be doing something different. So now I think what it is I think that it's a mental game of trying to keep the positive outlook, try and keep the other side rich and light, so that you don't get trapped. You don't get trapped in the, why didn't I do better? Or maybe I should have done better. Maybe I should have done this thing. Maybe I should have done that thing. Because at the end of the day, even now versus pre-pandemic, you can't compare shows anymore.
No.
It's a totally different world. There are people who I worked with pre-pandemic. They were like our main go-tos in We Banjo 3. We worked with them on every tour. They don't work in the industry anymore.
Because they had to find another way to make a living.
They just decided, no, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
So, everything's changed. So I think that's the other thing too, is like comparisons are, someone once told me, comparisons are odious, which it's such a silly phrase, but it's great,
All right. Well,
Go.
sorry. Your solo album, the one I'm holding,
Yeah.
came out 2023, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's another one coming.
Another one coming. Yeah.
What's it called?
You
don't know yet.
The name of the album, the working title on my Dropbox folder is Golden Light.
Okay.
First album I made, I wrote that album while writing Open the Road. Basically, I produced Open the Road, which was the first album I ever produced. I got into production work and studio work during the pandemic. And I'd always done like session work and stuff, but I never really produced a full album. And then we were trying to figure out in We Banjo 3 who was going to produce the new album, and we couldn't figure out who the right person was. And Martin was like, "Why don't you do it?" And I said, "No." But no, Martin's always been a real champion to me. Again, Martin's my brother, and was in We Banjo 3 for anyone who's like hasn't heard of us before. But Martin's been a real champion to me for years. He has always been the one being like, "I think you could do it." And so I was producing Open the Road while I was producing my solo album as well, which reflecting on that was actually like really good in a bigger sense, but kind of really difficult also. I think one of the things about doing two albums at the same time is I think there was like magnetism in both albums. A lot of certain types of songs ended up like getting sucked into the We Banjo 3 pool, and then a lot of the other ones got pushed into the other direction. So like For Venus and Open the Road are kind of like weirdly, they're like two sides of the same coin, but very different sides. I wanted to make an album of music at the time, which was just a passion project. I wanted to make an album of music that didn't feel like We Banjo 3 at the time. It felt like something different. I was living in New Hampshire under the base of Mount Monadnock, spending a lot of time outside. I was reading a lot of Carl Jung, Pat Berry, James Hillman, transcendentalists, Okay. I was reading a lot of like archetypal psychology, basically. And I got really into mythology. And so this idea of For Venus was maybe exploring a side of myself that I had never explored, which was you know, in We Banjo 3, the music is light. It's like uplifting a lot of the time, and it's often tends towards like the more clear and honest in terms of the lyrical content. It's We Banjo 3 is a very masculine band in ways, for want of a better word. And when I use the word masculine, I don't really mean male and female. I mean more like anima, animus, like the expression of the masculine.
Okay.
You know, the masculine can be in female or male. So We Banjo 3 was very that like masculine edge, and I wanted to explore in my own music of like, okay, but there's also this super sensitive guy here, and what if I were to do an album where I like took away some of the tools that I created a little limitation. So the entire album, I don't hold a plectrum for the whole album, which is crazy to me. I grew up playing trad music. I grew up playing, you know, one time me and Fergal, who's in the band, we came home from a gig and we looked up that the world record was set for the fastest tune ever was set by Frankie Gavin at 157 BPM.
Mm.
We sat down and we played at 171.
Whoa.
That night.
Wow.
I come from a tradition of just playing. I'm a player. I learned to use the word artist recently because it's a better descriptor of what you do. But I've never considered myself an artist. I've just considered myself I'm a player.
Okay.
I play music.
Yeah, that's fun
right?
to do.
Right? And I've learned to use the word artist because it's a better descriptor for when you're in meetings with people.
Yeah.
But so I think for Venus was maybe my exploration of that. I mean, like, what would this feel like to like lean on the song, lean on the lyric, to like also like lean on other people, like create an album of music that's not just me doing impressive stuff on the guitar. What it would be like to be like, how can I burrow into like this, into the themes and the lyrics that like really affect me? And at the time, I was going through a lot, and I was struggling a lot. And there's songs on that I listen to now, like Beneath. I wrote the song Beneath, which features Woven Kin. I wrote it when I was sitting in my backyard at the time, and there was a giant oak tree in my neighbor's yard, and sadly the inside of the tree had began to rot over years, and it was threatening to fall on their house. So they had to make that house. I can't imagine how hard that decision is. No judgment. I would do the same thing. You got to protect your house, right?
It'd be a bad surprise to wake
It would
up
be
to.
a bad surprise. And so they took this tree down, and at the time, I was really struggling with my own life. Like, you know, this was middle of the pandemic. I didn't know what I was doing anymore. Who am I? Who am I when I'm not out on stage? Like, have I really tended to that guy in the last 10 years? Like, who is he? What does he want? And I think a lot of that came out in the music. And Beneath is like it's a dark song, but it's a dark song with a lot of feeling and a lot of emotion, a lot of energy in some ways too. What a cool thing to be able to do to, like, you know, make that song come out, you know? And then on the flip side of that, it's like the final song in the album is Feel It, which I wrote. It was like the last song I wrote. It was like 9 o'clock at night, just had dinner. I was like, maybe I'll write for like 5 minutes and see what happens. And then out pops this song I recorded that night. I think I recorded it at 3 a.m. or something.
Mm-hmm.
But that song was all a very different thing, but a similar thing of like talking about something that I had never really talked about, which is like emotions and feelings. I grew up in Ireland. Like, feelings are hard for us sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, we're a very stoic people. So what my doctor tells me every time I go, he's like, "You're very stoic." It's like, yeah. He's like, "That's a bad thing. That's not a good thing.
Don't be proud.
Don't be proud of that." And "Feel It" is a song that I wrote. I wrote about the feelings that people have that they don't share. Like, I know my dad loves me. Absolutely, that guy adores me. I've felt love like nothing else before. Like, from my parents. They like are ideal parents. But the words "I love you" are super difficult.
You were telling the story on stage the other night, and I have a parallel experience. My father being raised, I mean, his parents were from Sicily, but, you know, he's totally American.
Yeah.
Similarly, I don't think I've ever heard the words, but I have heard the words "I love you like a son, Brody," to his dog hundreds and hundreds of times. He's never said to me, "I love you like a dog, John," but he has said, "I love you like a son." So I can relate.
Yeah, totally. And this is the thing is like, you know that
that's what he meant.
and that's what Feel It is.
Yeah.
And so to get into like the songs, they're like that. This album became about those little things that the songs that I didn't get to explore.
Play one. You have a guitar.
Yeah, let's do it.
But this is the longest I've gone without making somebody play a song. So I'm going to shut up and let you play. Which one are you going to do? You can do anything you want, actually. I thought we were going to start with something from the new record, but with the conversation, the way it went, we should play something from this record. So,
I'll do Feel It.
okay.
It's like let's do Feel It. Thought I heard you, and I meant to before I spoke. There's a feeling lies between us like a ghost. But I can't fit a feeling into words, and anything I say just makes it worse. I can tell you I feel it, I can tell you I feel it, I can tell you I feel it too. I can tell you I feel it, I can tell you I feel it, I can tell you I feel it too. I thought I heard myself say your name like a prayer. Did it mean so much that I hold you with the angels? But I can't fit a feeling into words, and anything I say just makes it worse. I can tell you I feel it, I can tell you I feel it, I can tell you I feel it too. I can tell you I feel it, I can tell you I feel it, I can tell you I feel it too. I can tell you I feel it, I can tell you I feel it, I can tell you I feel it too. I can tell you I feel it, I can tell you I feel it, I can tell you I feel it too. I can tell you I feel it, I can tell you I feel it, I can tell you I feel it too. I can tell you I feel it, I can tell you I feel it, I can tell you I feel it too.
Beautifully done. Feel It is a track from David Howley's debut solo record, and it's here on Acoustic Alternatives at Grove Studios. David, obviously, fans of mine who are probably in the USA more so than Ireland can tell you're from somewhere else, Ireland.
Definitely, yeah.
What part of Ireland did you grow up in?
So I grew up in the west coast of Ireland in Galway, in a town called Ardrahan, which I imagine nobody has ever heard of.
I've never heard of it.
It's very close to a town. The main kind of village that we grew up close to was Kinvara, which actually has a really cool musical past and a musical community. I mean, Declan O'Rourke lives in Kinvara. John Prine loved Kinvara. Literally, the first time I ever heard John Prine playing was sitting in a pub in Kinvara with his guitar playing songs in a session like a normal person. Like, did he not know he was... I think John Prine is the only person who didn't know that he was John Prine.
Nice. Well, what kind of things did you do growing up? I mean, obviously music is a part of your background, but what, like, as a kid, what were you doing before you picked up an instrument?
Yeah, so I played hurling, which is our, national sport. Very different to the type of hurling you do here, which is usually after you go to Wolverine for too long. Yeah, I played hurling in sports. I was never huge into sports, but water became like this really big draw for me. So I grew up, did a lot of swimming when I was a kid, and then ended up learning to surf as a teenager, which, again, people are like, surfing in Ireland? That sounds very cold. And the answer to that is, you are correct. It is very cold and very windy. But the flip of that was I grew up surfing, when it was just me and my brother and our two friends, and then we were the only people in the water. So you've got whole waves to yourself, just like an ocean of waves, and it's just you and your friends. And it was great. And it was a really cool way to grow up as well, of like to be in an environment like, you're in the Atlantic Ocean, it's winter, so it's 3 p.m. and the sun is starting to fade. You're bobbing up and down on 12 to 15 foot waves. And there's a giant cliff face in front of you.
Oh.
And there's a seal that keeps banging into your legs and scaring the living bejesus out of you.
He's not singing a Kiss from a Rose this time.
No, that's a very different seal.
Yeah.
I've never met that seal yet.
Okay, just checking.
But yeah, it was a great way to grow up, and like I think it's actually sort of influenced my music in ways too. Like nature and water, particularly the ocean, has been like a really big inspirational force for me. A lot of the writing I do is, which I don't really think I fully ever realize until I do it, but a lot of the writing I actually do is when I'm out in the middle of nowhere. I live in Colorado now, which if anyone has never been there, it's very high and there's a lot of sun. So I would say it's not a great place for an Irish person. I just don't go outside. No, I'm joking.
You burn.
I burn very quickly there. I live in Colorado and I spend a lot of time kind of in the mountains and in the wilderness, because I think there's something about that space that makes you kind of hear yourself and hear your thoughts and hear... It's funny, I used to live in Nashville and I really love Nashville. What a great place, and what an amazing place to learn how to songwrite. And I did a lot of writing sessions there with great people. I was lucky to be in rooms in BMI and ASCAP with great songwriters. I got a lot of great introductions. I'm eternally grateful for friends like Scott Mulvihill, Ross Holmes, these people who made me their family and introduced me to that town. And I realized at some point that I maybe wasn't the best type of songwriter for Nashville. I don't write from a title often. I don't really know what I'm writing about usually when I start writing. As I've spoken about in We Banjo 3, mental health has been a huge theme for me in my life. Something that I think learned that it was easier to just talk about it openly than try and hide it. I struggled with a lot with my mental health when I was younger. And so I think music and songwriting became kind of my own, which is quite common, but it became my own little therapeutic experience, my own little... But also from a different way. Sometimes for me, it's not even that I'm trying to work this stuff out in songs. It's that I feel, well, maybe if I can create something of value with this, then I can be okay with it existing. And I'm a big fan of embracing the shadow. I think that's maybe also what my first record and also this subsequent record is trying to push. Even the first song is called Shadow, is to try and kind of integrate those two parts. And I think the songwriting element for me often is me trying to create something of value around some of this craziness, and then feel okay, I can put that down now. That's that's done. You know.
As a kid, how many instruments
Oh my
did you
God.
learn and play? I mean,
My poor parents, man. I don't know if you're listening. You probably have a lot of listeners that have kids, and I'll say this: when your kid asks for a drum kit, just don't resist it. They'll win. They're kids. They'll win eventually. First band I was ever in was a drummer, actually.
wow. Okay.
Yeah, I was. This is a hilariously me story. I was in high school. I was about 14 at the time. I had been playing mandolin and banjo, and I think I just started learning guitar. And I was dating a girl called Shayna Lavin. And she was just like a wonderfully kind person, just such a beautiful human being. And I was totally madly in love. And her brother was like 4 years older than us. And he had a beard. You know, he was like a 17-year-old in school that had a beard. You know those guys?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like I don't look as old as he looked. I don't look as old now that he looked back then. You
Gotcha.
know?
Your boyish face has followed you through your 30s.
Yeah. I think maybe a lot. I think people that will connect with that. It's like he was terrifying. He was super nice, but he was terrifying. He came up to me in school one day and he goes, "Howley." And I was like, "Yes." He's like, "Do you play drums?" And I was like, "Yes." I lied. I'd never played the drums before. He's like, "Yes." He's like, "You're in the band." And I joined his band called Miss Cheater's Belt. I was the drummer. I was horrible.
I bet.
But I went home that night. I turned on MTV. I remember like super into Nirvana at the time, super into Dave Grohl, Foo Fighters, all that, like Taylor Hawkins, super into that. I saw how hard they hit the drums and I was like, I know how to do this. Wooden spoons, pillows. And I learned to play drums on wooden spoons and pillows. And I was the drummer in that band for like a year. I was horrible. But it was a really great way to be in a band because I think the drummer is often like you carry more stuff. You're in the back. And it was, I think that like now as the frontman often or the singer of a band, like I was the frontman singer of We Banjo 3, you know, in the solo music. I think it was a great place to start being in bands from was like, I want to be that guy at the back, holding the beat, supporting. And I think that like, you know, I played the show the other night with Martin and Kiana. I still feel like that. I know I'm singing the songs, but I also like, I come from the perspective of they're not following me. I'm not following them. We're just all supporting each other. So it's a really like, it's funny how like the instruments that you learn and the order you learn them in actually changed your like mind around how you do music. One of the things I always wish I did, I wish that I was in a choir when I was younger. I never got to be in a choir.
How did you find your voice? Because it's a great voice.
Wow, thanks. I, very first time I ever sang, I grew up Catholic, Irish Catholic. I refer to myself as a recovered Catholic, which I hope nobody finds offensive. It's just
It's a common phrase.
Irish Catholic was being Catholic in Ireland was very different. I think than being religion in Ireland was very different when I was younger.
Yeah.
There was a lot of stuff there that that just didn't work for me and didn't fit with who I was. But I was making my first Holy Communion, and I went to a school where there were 60 people in the entire school.
Oh.
There were 5 people in my class.
Oh.
All were boys. So normally, at first Holy Communion time, they'd be like, well, none of these boys are going to be able to sing, so let's just get a girl to sing. You know, that was the mind frame in Ireland at the time. We didn't have a girl in our class, so
Okay.
one of us had to sing, and it was my teacher, Mrs. O'Doherty. Honestly, I really respect her. She was like, she did not take prisoners. She was stern, but man, she was fair and she was wise. And she pulled me aside one time after class and she said, "You're going to sing." And I resisted with all my might. She said, "You're going to sing." And that was the first time I ever sang in front of people. My dad was a singer and sang a lot when we were kids. And I really admired the way he sang. And I still do. He's got such he's such an expressive voice. He's so like, he sings to you, you know?
Yeah.
Really sings to you.
It's nice.
And yeah, it was the first time I ever sang. And then I ended up singing in competitions then after that. Like you know, the Scahill, which are these Irish music competitions in Ireland. I ended up doing the singing competition, and I got through to the All Ireland, the final round of it, and I was singing like a lament. I remember that was the song that I was singing for the competition. And again, like, talk about like just like chance. I turned to my mom and dad the night before the final competition, which was a really big honor to be in this competition. I turned to them and I said, I don't want to do it. My mom was like, why? I was like, I don't want to sing sad songs anymore, which is hilarious to think now. I was like, I don't want to sing sad songs anymore. And my mom was like, well, you have to do it. And my dad was like, actually, he doesn't. He was like, if you don't do it, you don't have to do it. And I didn't. This is not one of those stories where the kid decides by themselves. You know, this is not Hollywood. I didn't like march in there on the final day to John Barnum's "You're the voice and understand it." Like, that's not how it happened. I just didn't do it.
Hollywood.
Hollywood.
Good.
But I didn't do it. Okay. And I think that's the reason I sing now, because it was my choice.
Okay.
I decided I don't want to do this. This is not me. I don't care about like this, and so I don't want to do it. And my parents let me. And every other parent that was around them was like, "What? You can't let him quit?
What are you doing?"
Well, yeah, you're like, you can't let him quit. He has to do it. My dad was like, actually, he doesn't. And I think that again, those things that shape you, again, you know, you have a lot of listeners that are going to be parents of like I did not have an ideal childhood. I had ups and downs and whatever. And like, nobody has an ideal childhood. But like, some of the stuff that my parents got really right was like, we had one rule around music. You could try whatever you want, but if you did it, you had to commit. And you could quit, but not mid-season. I learned double bass at one point. I hated it, but I did 6 months of it because I had signed up for 6 months of it, and I did 6 months of it. And now, as a studio engineer, like as a producer, being able to, like, I wouldn't say I can play bass, but I can play enough bass, and that is priceless to me, to be able to sit down to pretty much any instrument in the room and be like, I can play enough of this to get an idea out. I can play enough of this to put down something for now, and then let's send this out to a real player. I can put down the idea of this. And like that, I think those moments, some of those choices that you make are super important. Like if I had kids and my kids turned to me and said, I don't want to do this anymore, I'd be like, okay, that's fair. You sound like you've made a careful choice about this. I'm going to encourage you to not quit, but I'm not going to force you to do it. So yeah, I think that was like a huge impact on me in terms of the music stuff, was like choice. It was always my choice.
Very good. Well, before I continue my line of questioning, because, you know, there's a limited amount of time that I get to spend with you, and I have to eventually go to my actual day job. You have a guitar. Would you like to do one of the new songs?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do... You know what? Can I sing you... I haven't talked about this song yet, but it's the latest song that we...
Anything you want.
Love it. This is the latest song that I brought out. It's called Chapter 1.
I've heard it.
I'm going to tune my guitar first. Then we can cut this part. You're not going to cut these parts. You're just going to have me being like... wailing away in the background.
Need a guitar tech.
This was the first song that really took me by surprise, I think, in my life. My now partner, we were friends for years, and she sent me a text one night. It's about like a year and a half ago. I haven't been together that long. We've known each other for years. She sent me a text in the middle of the night. Well, middle of the night Irish time. I just finished up a bunch of studio work for somebody else. You know, my little studio room was microphones and tube mics everywhere, and you know the chaos that you get into after a day of recording, where it's just spaghetti city in terms of cables. And she sent me a message with a link to an article in the Atlantic about the buy-in of falling in love, the feeling of falling in love, and how like there's a certain buy-in, there's a certain amount of risk involved. And me being the completely overdramatic person that I am, didn't respond immediately. I wandered around my studio cleaning up, and in the space of 2 hours, I had written and recorded this song. It's called Chapter 1. It starts with a line from my grandmother when I would end up in ER as a wild child. She would say to my parents that the wildest of youths makes the wisest of men. And I think that maybe that applies a lot in love, a lot more in love now than I could have ever imagined. That, we all have quote unquote failed relationships. And I think in that night, what I realized was all of the relationships I'd ever had led me to the point that I'm at right now. And in some ways, in that night, I was so grateful for all the things that went wrong, all the moments that I did wrong, all the moments that I was hurt, because they were little learning lessons that I needed to have to be who I am now. And I still don't feel ready. That's the wild thing of like,
it's like a train is coming at you when you think about it, doesn't
right,
it?
It is.
It's crazy. Don't start the song until the train passes.
But anyway, I had finished up all the studio work, and normally, any songwriters that are listening right now, they know exactly the next step. You write a song, you pull out your phone, you go to the voice recorder on it, hit record, and you record a pass of the song just so you can remember it. And for some reason, I've never done this. I was sitting in my studio, and I was like, all the mics are on, and I have this Soyuz mic that I really like. It's just a Soyuz tube mic. It's really just a really beautiful sounding mic. I was like, I'll just record it into that. So pull up the mic, hit record, literally on the end of the session that I was working on. Somebody else's project, technically.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I just hit record, and I just sing it into the mic, thinking, okay, that's just like a demo, and then I'm producing the album, and I'm trying to re-record the song. I maybe re-recorded 5 different versions of this. I could never get the emotion and the feeling that was in that first night. And so that's what I released, which was wild.
That's great.
And it was a friend of mine who was sitting in the studio with me, listening to this new version that I'd done that was all produced out. And he was like, yeah, it's good. He said, can I hear the demo? And I was like, yeah, sure. And we listened to the demo, and he turned to me, he's like, you just wasted like many hours of your life. He's like, yeah, I got to release that. And I was like, oh, I can't release that. It's got this and it's got that. And he's like, yeah, but it doesn't matter. So that's the song.
It doesn't have heart. The other version, the demo had heart.
It was me trying to recreate a feeling, and you can't do that. So this is Chapter 1. Yeah. Oh, I never pack a raincoat. My poor grandmother, she tried. She'd say the ones who end up wisest are the ones who start off wild. And I am constantly in motion. I'm scared to death of being alone. But when I'm lying there beside you, yeah, I guess I feel at home. I get quiet when I'm hurting. Yeah, I get it from my dad. I talk too much when I get nervous. No one to thank but me for that. And I get funny when I'm jealous. I think too much, ask not enough. So if you ever think I'm being distant, I hope you always call my bluff. And what if I don't deserve you enough? We make a world and I can't hold it up. Why What if all that I've known to be true about love was only just chapter 1? And they say patience is a virtue, but have they ever seen your body, where every line reads like a road map, and exploring it's my hobby. I hope you learn to take a compliment. Oh, Lord knows that you deserve them. I know you think you've got this work to do, but to me you're imperfect. What if I don't deserve you enough? We make a world and I can't hold it up. What if all that I've known to be true about love was only just chapter 1?
That is beautiful.
Thanks, John.
I want you to have a hit with that, but my mind went to, what if Hosier recorded that? I mean, just because he has a bigger audience than you,
Yeah.
I wonder what that would do, because that's a beauty.
Here's the thing, though, and I agree with you. I'll be super honest. I'll get super honest. I probably last July I was walking across a car park. I turned to my partner Caitlin. I said, "I think I'm gonna quit," and she's like, "Okay." Like, quit what? And I was like, "I think I'm gonna quit music. I think I'm done." And she goes, "Okay." She's like, "Let's set it. I'm gonna put a meeting in the calendar from a year from now." She helps me a lot with my work. She's like, really I'm the ADHD type, so I find structure really difficult, but I need structure. She is my structure. She's the structure in my life. She, if you've listened to my new album, if you're listening to me now being like, "Oh, I've heard that guy," it's probably because of her. She's the person who's like in the background, just like really helping me. She said, "I'm going to put a meeting in the calendar a year from now. It's an hour-long meeting, and we're going to discuss you quitting music." I thought that was it was like the smartest, most annoying thing that someone could do. I think at the time I was just, I felt like I was coming up against all the walls, all the no's, all the struggles, all the bits that you can't move. And what has happened since was like, oh, that's right. I have a whole fresh new set of problems right now, but the problems that I had back then, they're not really here anymore. I think that one thing I'm starting to learn is I don't need to fix all the problems all the time. I just need them to continue to move. I need it to be liquid. When it feels solid, then when you hit a rock, man, you're done, right? You're not moving anymore. It's so hard to move past that. But if you're out swimming in the ocean, you can keep swimming for a little longer. And it's just so funny that like since that, that was, 6-8 months ago, man, it's like totally different now. Again, it's like I found, and maybe that was a really good point to get to too, because it was like, it made me evaluate like, why am I doing this? Why? This is so hard. Like music industry. Like,
I've been there with my
totally.
music industry job too, because I don't have a good income either.
Yeah, you understand. It's never been, and it's really difficult. And it's like you do actually eventually have to ask yourself, am I just doing this because I really want to do it? And then I'm like essentially asking other people to show up and like support me.
Yeah.
And it's funny that like once I got to that, that's when I started getting the feedback. I opened up my Spotify for Artists app the other day,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe I shouldn't mention my Spotify for Artists. We'll give it a new name. I opened up that app the other day just to check on I was going to change the canvas out of one of the songs. And I noticed that there were 70 people listening to chapter 1 at the same time. Now, for like the likes of Hosier, that would be nothing. But again, for me, that was like, I called Caitlin. I text Martin, I text my brother a screenshot of it. Like, this is the thing, is like, the comparative edge is so dangerous because, yeah, if Hosier had that song, it would be a hit, or it would be heard by a lot more people. But the amount of messages I've gotten from people, particularly in that first 2 verses, where it's like, that was me figuring out some of the stuff I wasn't ready for. Like, I wasn't ready to be loved. Like, I wasn't ready to, like, loving someone. That's actually, I think loving someone's like, that's vulnerable.
Very.
It's very vulnerable, right?
Very vulnerable.
But I think it's actually, weirdly, it's easier to love somebody else than to be loved. Because to be loved means I need to just be okay that I'm slightly broken and slightly disheveled, and this other person over there, through complete free will, has decided that they love me and they want to like be with me while I'm like this. That for me was so uncomfortable. Like, how dare you love me? Like, who do you think you are?
I'm not lovable. Are you kidding?
Right. And I think that first couple of lines in that song, I think that's what I'm speaking to. I think that was really important for me, of like, what if I don't deserve this enough? What if I'm going to mess this up? And then that question of like, I think, and I really do feel that, like, everything I've learned about love up to this point was like it was the introduction. It was the very first chapter. And I feel like since I wrote that song, I've learned so much. And I imagine that when I get to be my parents' age, I'll have learned a lot more. And, you know, I look at people like my grandmother again, and like, it was a different type of love, but like the love, I grew up with 2 grandmothers that were next door to me. And the love that those women had for me and my brother was immense. And we were painful as children. I was such an annoying kid, but I loved them and they loved us. And they loved us for our flaws and our wildness. And again, that wildest of youths makes the wisest of men. Or I have a t-shirt now. I changed the quote slightly because I wanted to degenderize it, but it's the ones who start off wildest are the ones who start off wildest are the ones who ends up wise. It is a funny thing of like, yeah, maybe that song won't have as much reach with me as it would with someone like Hosier, but this is a great thing about independent music, is like, but the people that it reaches matter.
Yeah.
I have another song called Dig. Yeah.
Reached me.
Yeah, man, I appreciate that. On my first album was a song called Dig Your Heels, which I wrote in a very similar political moment that we're living in right now. I'm not going to get too far into it, but, you know, I'm an immigrant to America.
Absolutely.
This is not my home country. I'm here by luck and good lawyers. And I love what I do here. I feel super purposeful here. I feel like I am Irish. That's my culture. I respect the American culture, and I'm here to bring the gifts of my culture and the different colors that I grew up with into the colors of America. And I think that that's what makes this place so amazing.
Great American melting pot as well.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
I was struggling with, like, sometimes I struggle with just how humans treat each other. So I wrote this song called Dig Your Heels, which is a protest song. It's a protest song wrapped up in, you know, every one of my songs is about, you could listen to it from, and I really aim for that. I really aim for that. I want you to listen to the song and put your experience on that. I think that's the beautiful part about poetry, is like, I don't want to tell you exactly what the song is about, because I do think it's important that I might have written the song about one thing. For some people, chapter 1 is a song about God. Okay. And for me, it's not. But if that's what it is for you, I fully support that. I want that. I want
Sure.
everyone to experience it. Anyway, Dig Your Heels. I've gotten so many messages from the LGBTQ community, which I identify with. I'm not straight. I identify as bisexual, and I'm not. It's not a super huge part of my life, but I do identify in that same section, and it's been really fucking cool for me. Whoops, I did one. That was my one curse.
Sorry.
It feels really cool to get messages from people being like, "Hey, I listen to that song like daily."
Wow.
Maybe that's like 10 people, but that matters.
Yeah,
you know,
made a difference.
Totally. It's like, it's my offering again, and it's not like an ego thing. If I didn't do it, 500 other people would do it, but it's the offering. It's my little plate of, if we were all hunter-gatherers out in the wild, it's my little plate of berries that I found. It might be only a handful, but if I put my handful in with your handful and everyone puts in their handful, then we have an abundance. And I think that maybe is like encapsulate all of the music that I'm doing right now is I'm just trying to put in my handful. Yeah, some people are going to listen to it and go, that's not for me. That's cool.
Thank you for your open and honest responses to the questions. We're not done yet. We're not done yet, but I do need to mention, again, David Howley is my guest on Acoustic Alternatives. The podcast is being recorded in Grove Studios in Ypsilanti. If you're a musician in the Ann Arbor or Detroit music scene, perhaps you're a touring musician and you're playing the Ark or St. Andrews Hall or the Blind Pig or a nearby venue. You're like, God, I need some place to practice for a little while. This has many studios of different sizes, and it's very affordable.
Yep.
You can rent it 24/7. You want to be here at 2 a.m. after your gig? Come on in.
Mm-hmm.
It's a space that has been home to the podcast for almost all the episodes. There was the occasional, like, I went to Jeff Daniels' house and recorded on his property, and another band was doing a practice for their gig in another studio, so I did it there. But for the most part, this is the home, and I wouldn't be doing it without Grove Studios. So if you're looking for a place, you want to get out of the garage and get into the studio, Grove Studios is your place. And so far, David's only seen one room.
It's great.
But
honestly, and the other thing is, if you came here to do your band rehearsal, you could just have a chat with John as well while you're here.
I only work 5 minutes away. I can come visit you.
Yeah.
So, all right. So songwriting, we'll talk about that in a little bit as we're extending into a long chat here.
Yeah.
Sorry. No, I'm enjoying
chatty
it
today.
I'm enjoying it thoroughly. I have a whole bunch of things that I'm going to skip over for the sake of time. Do you approach songwriting differently as a solo artist than you did as a member of We Banjo 3, or is it pretty much the same thing? You just kind of parse it out like that would have been band song, this is more solo song?
I never wrote with the intention of anything being anything. If that's the place to start with that. Like, I think I just, again, what was actually really nice is when I was writing for We Banjo 3 and I didn't have this solo music, sometimes like I would just end up with Dropboxes full of songs that I didn't know what to do with. Now, other artists have recorded some of those, and I've worked on songs with other people that they've recorded. Great, but it is hard sometimes when you're like, well, that's actually a really nice little song, but I don't think it's ever going to get on a We Banjo 3 album. So often I don't know what I'm writing when I'm writing it, and maybe this is the cool thing too. If like I see production as I got a chance to work with Trina Shoemaker once, who's a fantastic producer. She's like Queens of the Stone Age, Brandy Carlisle. She's produced Trina has produced some of the most incredible albums. She is an absolute legend. And she once said to me that production is an extension of songwriting. And I was like, that's kind of a cool thing to think about. That yeah, there's the song is the lyrics and the melody, sure. But maybe also, say in the case of We Banjo 3, where it's like a semi-instrumental band too, like some of our bands, like if you listen to Sunflower or Haven, those songs aren't complete without that little mandolin riff or that little banjo like run or that, fiddle line. Like if you think about Stevie Wonder's Superstition, man, the lyrics of that song are killer, but
without
that, that's the bit that you recognize.
Yep.
And I would see that as songwriting, but I also see that as production. That's like, so maybe the thing that actually shifted was starting to produce my own music and produce the band's music, and even when working with other producers now, because I have that like a little bit of experience in that world, that's what feels really fun. Is like, you know, people say like, what comes first, the lyrics or the words or the melody? I'm like, sometimes it's neither. Sometimes it's like a flash vision of like a drum shuffle, or it's like, what would happen if I put a double bass on a side chain with a kick drum? So like what they do in EDM with big bass drums. What if I did that with a double bass and an acoustic kick drum, but I used all the same side chaining and all the same compressors? What would that sound like? And then I'm, you know, writing for like that song for Venus, the title track of the first album, and I get to the end section and I'm like, I really want this to feel like it's like passionate. Ooh, what about that kick drum double bass idea? And I ring my friend Scott and I'm like, I need you to send me 6 minutes of you bowing the same string over and over again.
6 minutes.
And like, so yeah, I think that more so now I view it as like, I'm not a traditional songwriter. I'm not super talented in the like I've worked with people like Kat Higgins and like Scott Mulvihill, you know, McKenna Hartland, these incredible Nashville songwriters that are young. They're my age. Mm-hmm. Like Kat wrote Mexico for Carrie Underwood. Okay. Like she's a phenomenal songwriter. She's like some massive country hits. And I get into a room with those people and I'm like, oh my God, I don't know anything I'm doing. But I think coming from the Irish traditional perspective of like the texture of the music is like really important to me. And so I probably see myself more in line with songwriting like that. And I think, you know, if modern music has a lot more of that. When you listen to a Bon Iver record, you can hear that the production is as important as the songwriting. And that's been really fun for me. And I think that maybe that's what's shifted in terms of like when I was writing music for We Banjo 3, I just didn't have to think as much of all the parts. I was like lyrics, guitar part, and I would often have some ideas around the banjo and the mandolin parts, but I would also try and be careful not to get attached to that because, you know, they call that demoitis. Because at the end of the day, I wasn't the mandolin player and I wasn't the banjo player in that band. Now, as a solo musician and doing this, where I can have anyone in my band at any time, you know, I love piano. So there's a lot of piano on my records. But I also love the bouzouki. So there's bouzouki on it. On my first album was Calabash. There's, you know, a Moog synthesizer alongside traditional Irish fiddle. Why not? So it is different. It's like I think the playground got bigger with my solo music, and then the stage show then follows, and that's a really fun part of it too. I know you didn't. This is in a slightly different question or getting into a different thing, but that's also a big part of it. Is like then taking the record and being like, okay, how am I going to make this happen on stage? You know, and how can I do this when it's just me? How can I do this when it's a full band? So the production kind of the album grows into the production of the stage show then.
Cool. You mentioned Haven, and did you write the lyrics for that one, or is that a group project?
Yeah, well, me and Martin sat down. We started Haven in Nashville. I can't remember what we were doing there, but I do remember being there, and it started with the mandolin melody and the guitar part. And I had written another song years earlier that had the line, "Lay down your weapons, lay down with me." And Martin remembered that, and he was like, that'd be a great first line for a song. And I started with little journal entries, and I tip my hat to Martin in that a lot. Like, I did not write a single word of that song down. Martin kept all of that song together through all of our different... We probably wrote that song over 6 months. Kiana, his wife, was a part of it too. And Martin was the like the guy who he was the threads that held that song together. He was the one who really, you know, kept the parts together. And even things like that, you know, pre-chorus was different. It was like, ooh, and that it was all very natural though. Yeah.
It's a song that speaks to me. It's one of those,
I can
like,
play it if you want.
I would love that.
Yeah, let's do it.
It's one of those, like, if you ask people, what song do you wish you had written? And then that would make a list for me, because it has a thing that feels like something I wish I could say, but you as a songwriter and you and your brother and Kiana wrote it in a way that expressed it better than I could. So
Martin is a great writer.
Yeah.
And I think we're a good writing team. I tend to think a lot more in melody. And the words that come from me are often I write my writing style is like percolation. I don't try and ever force it anymore because it's never good if I force it. But my way of writing songs is I will write for a little bit, and if it's not flowing, I'll walk away. And then at some point I'll just pick up the guitar and start singing and playing, and the words will just flow out. Usually any of the songs that have ended up on albums for me have been like written in 20 minutes. And some of them I struggle with for a little longer or maybe add to later on, but generally it's like percolation for me. And Martin's really good at like holding the line in between. You know, I could forget about a song for 4 years. Martin would be like, hey, remember that song we were working on yesterday? Why don't we? So like the song started with that little mandolin line. Lay down your weapons, lay down with me. We will stare at the stars and think what life could be. Island of memories, we'll leave them where they lie. Could we make a choice for love and joy? The moon lights a path we can travel down. The rivers run wild with what has come before. Cast aside for new and more and more and more and more and more and more. Let me be your haven. Let me be your line. Sail with me across the ocean. Find a place for love and joy. We've had trouble, we've had strife, we've met our plans to march on towards the promised lands. Walk with me neath the rising sky. Could we make a choice for love and joy? The moon lights a path we can travel down. Rivers run wild with what has come before. Cast aside for new and more and more and more and more and more and more. Let me be your haven. Let me be your line. Sail with me across the ocean deep. Find a place for love and let me be your haven. Let me be your haven. Let me be your haven. Let me be your haven.
Well, no matter what else happens in my day, I've had the best moment I'm going to have all day right freaking there. Thanks
John.
for doing that. Martin Howley is my guest today on Acoustic Alternatives. That's a song recorded by his previous band, not at their done project. They're just a project that's in pause mode. We Banjo 3. Look it up, stream it, buy it, whatever you got to do, own that song. That is a definite classic for me. And,
Thanks. Yeah.
Appreciate you playing that.
Thank you. Thanks for asking me. And thank you for wearing the We Banjo 3 t-shirt as well.
One of the two I own. The other one was related to an ARC show that
That's right.
I was wearing it on Wednesday at the ARC show.
This is Seamus the Sheep.
Seamus the Sheep. There he is.
Yeah.
Well, we're kind of running short on time. I've got a bunch of more questions, so let's do the short answer versions.
Let's do it.
All right, let's see.
I've never been one
I know.
to be... sorry.
It's okay.
I'm
loving the conversations.
I had 4 coffees this morning in preparation for this.
You must need to pee, so let's go. What was playing for President Obama like?
Wow.
If you can be short about that. It's
Yeah,
probably
totally.
impossible.
Honestly, an honor. Honestly, it was like one of those things where it was just so surreal. I also learned a very valuable lesson. When you meet the president, the Secret Service take you aside and they say, hey, we need to prep you on some things. Don't hand him anything. He's not going to take it. Don't touch him unless you, like, if he puts his hand out to shake your hand, shake it, but don't touch him. And the other thing is, you refer to him as Mr. President. That's it. Always, thank you, Mr. President. Rehearse saying, thank you, Mr. President.
Wow.
And just say that. And I, being cocky at the time, was like, I talk on stage every night. I'm like totally fine. I'm like totally chill, man. So he reaches out his hand, shakes my hand and says, wow, that was a fantastic performance. And I said, thanks very much, man. And then he looks at me with a kind of like total shock and a smile and was like,
You didn't say Mr. President.
no, I just called the president, probably the most powerful man in the world, man.
Because it was natural. You were just having conversation, right?
It's like, again, I come from a super casual culture where like everyone's respected, you know. I will look back on that with a lot of laughter and also like I learned a valuable lesson. Listen to what they tell you. Rehearse it.
Not as a performer, what's your favorite music experience as a fan of music? Like something you saw or...
That's a great question. Wow. What just pops straight into my head.
That's what we're looking for.
I'm a big fan of particularly the Dave Matthews and Tim Reynolds project.
Okay.
I was a big Dave Matthews band fan when I was younger. Mm-hmm. But I think what I really loved was that live album Live from Radio City that Dave Matthews and Tim Reynolds did. Mm-hmm. I think it's because it reminded me of me and my brother. Oh. You know, it's like songs, but then like it's like the representation of these like great songs, but like with 2 guys on stage just like riffing off each other. Mm-hmm. And me and my brother got to see that in Dublin live. Oh, cool. We flew home from Japan. And the night we landed was Dave Matthews and Tim Reynolds were playing in the Olympia in Dublin, and we were like, let's go. And we were out of our minds tired. Like, we were not even fully human. But I remember, I don't know, there's a lot of other experiences, but right now that's the one that's in my head. It was just the magic of 2 people enjoying each other on stage. And just, I talking to my mom about this, and she's talking about like, you know, she's like, you know, it must be interesting being in a band. We're talking about this over Christmas. I said, it is. I said, if I could, she's like, what do you think the most important bit is? I said, the most important thing in a band is that you like each other, that you like hanging out. Because think of the great bands. Think of the bands that you like really love their music and they're like prolific. It's because they spent a ton of time together. And I think it's better if you just actually enjoyed that time.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
How often does the muse visit? How often is songwriting a thing?
I am constantly writing.
Okay. You writing right now?
Yeah, I am actually. I'm like, I'm always...
Take this experience with John and turn it into a song.
Yeah. I was sitting with John. He had his t-shirt on. Anyway, I'm always writing. I think it's like a nervous tick at this point. And I write in very different places, and like I'll often sit down and write like melodies and write songs with the guitar in my hand, it's usually when I can't sleep at night or when I'm in a Uber or on somewhere that like I'll take out my phone and I'll just start slamming out lyrics. So even on the way over here, I was like kind of working on something that I was working on at home, and I was like, oh, and then all of a sudden I'm like, for some reason, feeling the feelings that I was feeling at the time, and I'm just gonna jot down these feelings. And so yeah, I'm writing a lot. I do write a lot. I try and make time for it too, which is the other important part. I'd like try and make a little time in my day for noodling. I think noodling is like the secret weapon of any writer. It's just
ideas pop out while you're doing that. Yeah,
it's just pick up a guitar for no reason and just play.
Irishman's perspective. Why are you in America in March? Why would you not be in Ireland? Because we celebrate probably differently than you do. St.
That's
Patrick's
true.
Day.
Honestly, I think St. Patrick's Day is a bigger event in America than it is in Ireland.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, it is. And I think it's because I think that my experience is that there's two different versions of Irish people, and there's two different versions of Irish culture. There's Irish culture in Ireland, and then there's Irish culture in America, which is more Irish immigrant culture. So like in Ireland, we have never seen corned beef and hash. That doesn't exist. But it's a huge thing for the Irish immigrant population here because like I grew up with bacon and cabbage, which is what corned beef and hash essentially is a representation of, but in the immigrant form. And so I think that's why I'm here. It's like, I think that there's actually a real, and it's different. Like, I think this is the first year, I've been living in the US pretty much for like 10 years now.
Okay.
And this is my first year where I like even my friends joke me, they're like, you now have Barry's tea. And like Barry's tea is like the brand of tea from Ireland. And that we, like every Irish person has about 800 boxes of it in their house. Like literally this is like, my dad doesn't drink water, he just drinks tea.
Oh.
This is the first year I've ever started buying that and keeping it in my house. And like I'm that guy that's flying back from Ireland with like bags of tea and bottles of illegal whiskey in my suitcase. I think this is the first year that I'm like, I've started doing those things that people do when they move away from home, where they like try and bring a little piece of home with them.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's why I'm here. I think it's like, it's really cool to be able to like play at shows and then have people come up and be like, I left Ireland 35 years ago. And you're like, wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
And you get to like bring a little piece of home to them.
We're damn glad to have you here.
I'm really glad to be here.
Would you feel comfortable doing another new one, or shall we just say we're done?
Let's do another new one.
All right, then we're going to be done.
Yeah.
Because I got to go to work.
Yeah, let's do another one.
What is it? What is the song you're going to do called?
That's a good question.
How many of the songs are ready for this new album that we don't know the name of officially?
Well, I'm kind of building the plane as I fly it. I had a full album fully ready, and I sort of scrapped it and went back to the drawing board.
Don't do that.
I think it's the best thing I did. A lot of the same songs are still involved.
Okay.
But I like took them and was like, hey, let's work with these a little more.
What if,
right? And it's a fun process to be able to do. I'm actually going to do something that's not even one of my songs. I'm going to do an Irish song for you.
Is it public domain?
It's public domain.
Great. Does it have a title?
Mary and the Soldier. I learned it from playing of Paul Brady. And it's like, I think a lot of artists, a lot of musicians, I started off as a pub musician, doing gigs around. I used to do 14 gigs a week at one point, which is too many gigs a week. But this was the song that I would pretty much start every gig with. It was like my settle-in song. I think a lot of artists have this, particularly if you're like a, cover musician, if you're doing pub gigs or whatever, that you have a song that you sing that you like, this is how you settle into the gig. And this is called Mary and the Soldier. Come all ye lads of high renown, that would hear of a fair young maiden, as she roved out of a summer's day, for to see the soldiers parading. They march so bold and they look so gay, the colours flying and the bands did play. And it caused poor Mary for to say, oh, I'll wed you, me darling soldier. She viewed the soldiers on parade, and as they stood at their leisure, oh, Mary to herself did say, oh, at last I have found my treasure. But oh, how cruel your parents must be to banish me, darling, so far from me. Oh, I'll leave them all and I'll go with thee, me bonny undaunted soldier. Oh, Mary dear, your parents' love, oh, I pray don't be unruly, for when you're in a foreign land, oh, I pray don't be unruly. Perhaps in battle I might fall from a shot from an angry cannonball, and you so far from your daddy's hall to be advised by a darling soldier. I have 50 guineas in bright gold, likewise a heart that's open, and I'll leave them all and I'll go with you, oh, me bonny undaunted soldier. And if in battle you might fall from a shot from an angry cannonball, well, I'll leave them all and I'll go with thee, me bonny undaunted soldier. And when he saw her loyalty, and Mary so true-hearted, he said, me darling, married we'll be, and nothing but death will part us. And when we're in a foreign land, I'll guard you, darling, with my right hand, in hopes that God might stand a friend to Mary and her darling soldier.
I may be Italian by half Italian anyway, by name and certainly by my father's birth, but I have a Celtic heart, and the music of your country always hits me better than any other music from any other country. Quite honestly, thank you.
We'll claim you. We'll call you O Bommarito.
Oh, Bommarito. I've called myself that on St. Patrick's Day before.
Bommarito.
Oh, Bommarito. Oh, Bommarit.
Bommarit.
Yes, take that. David, what a pleasure. I wish we had more time because I had so much more I'd love to chat with you. So, hey, the next album.
Yeah, the next album.
We'll do more. But I typically, for the podcast, give people like one chance to tell their story and play the songs. And then like, we've already told your story. But I think we have so much more we could discuss.
Honestly, this is such a pleasure. It's such, and I just hats off to you on doing this. Like, what a cool podcast. What a cool project to be able to talk to artists like this. I would sit here and talk all day. I hope you're good at editing. I hope you can like take about 60% of this out. But yeah, thank you for having me on. Such a pleasure.
Thanks to Grove Studios for making me comfortable here. They make sure that we have a spot to do this. They redesigned the podcast studio after destroying it down the hall and put it back in a better space. So Grove Studio, again, if you're looking for a place to practice as a musician in the Ann Arbor, Detroit area, this is super convenient, 24/7. Nothing wrong with a touring musician stopping here either for a couple of hours. Why not? But David, what a pleasure. I look forward to hearing the rest of the record. The little teases you've given me have been fantastic, especially Chapter 1. Another one that just gets to my heart. Well done.
Thank you, man.
Cheers to you.
Thank you.
Keep listening to the podcast. The next one will be Brian Vander Ark. If you remember the Verve Pipe from the 90s, he's already been a guest on the podcast, but he's got life changes and things and a new Verve Pipe record coming out. So we're going to talk about that in just a few more days. So thanks for checking out Acoustic Alternatives. If you want to support me, I have a Patreon page. I don't make much money doing this at all because I don't have a sponsor. So Patreon is really the best way to help me out. JohnBommarito.com has all the information. Thanks for listening.